So the word around town is Pusha T had to pay north of 7 figures to get out of his deal with Def Jam. Pusha T's manager, Victor, sat down with Billboard and really chronicled this whole thing. Now, one thing I'm going to say is I appreciate when the artists and their managers are candid. I take things with a grain of salt, but the more you can give me an information, the more at least I can get a little closer to the truth. And in that headline, Pusha T himself, though, you know what I'm saying, he actually, I'll show you. Listen, it says, according to Pusha T longtime manager, Pusha T, Stephen Victor, Pusha T paid 7 figures to get out of his record deal with Def Jam. You know what I'm saying? And then Push retweet right there says, no lies told. So let's get into this Billboard article. Y'all know I like to get the meat and potatoes of things, right? Now, the reason I like going right into the article and not just talk about the headline is really to understand the situation better, because narratives are just narrative, right? One thing I will say I got out of this article is I want to reiterate to you guys, Def Jam didn't drop Push and his brother, No Malice, okay? They bought themselves out of the contract. I think that's worth something, whether you're a pro Pusha guy, pro Drake guy, and all this nonsense, pro Kendrick guy. Those truths matter, okay? So they asked Stephen Victor, when you started to hear objections to the Lamar verse on the Clips album, where were they coming from? I like this piece of information right here for someone like me who wants to know the ins and outs of the music industry. It says, listen, UMG has this department where they review lyrics, okay? We're going to skip down here, right? Because this ain't that department is to protect artists and the labels from lawsuits or copyright infringement. That part's important. I'm going to come to that in a later, right? Down here, they say, let's say you interpolate somebody else's song. That department is there to make sure that song is properly cleared. It's not meant to be like, yo, you said XYZ by XYZ artist, so we're not going to release this music. Now, I'm rarely, I should say, on the side of the label. But one thing I want to point out here to Mr. Stephen Victor, I'm sure knows the music industry better than I do, and to the rest of the fans. I keep trying to point out to you guys, in this case, it seems like no one from Drake's camp asked for it, right? But Def Jam was like, we're not quite sure about the optics of Pusher and Kendrick, two Drake ops, linking up together while we got our own situation, because remember, Def Jam's parent company is UMG. So I want to hammer on that point that although we don't know the exact timetable of everything, was this because before the filing was done in November? Most of you guys are saying no, because Pusha had said this album was already done. I think things can get a little convoluted, but I want to tell you guys, listen, maybe right after the beef, Drake already started trying to meet with the label and mediate and say, hey, this with UMG, and say, hey, this is not working for me. Y'all to protect me, I'm threatening to go to court. I'm sure whatever this department was at UMG, with Def Jam or whatever, we're like, we don't like the optics of this. And with that said, I want to let you guys know, whatever UMG is saying in court with Drake, and you can not like Drake's lawsuit, and I think I'm not very fond of it either. Just know they're here to protect their ass and nothing else. They're not here to protect their pop culture. They're here to protect their ass, right? As you can see, they played on a lot of us, right? We're saying, oh, Drake's trying to ruin hip hop culture, and they eviscerated him in their filings. But then they turned around and realized that, you know what? This might affect our case. This can be used as evidence against us. Well, that Kendrick record ain't coming out. You know what I'm saying? Now, you can then have it trickle down. You can then trace that back, I guess, to Drake. So I'm cool with that. And be like, yeah, it's Drake's fault. I get it. Even though it's not Drake's request. So I understand what you guys are saying on that end. I just want to clean that up to let y'all know at the end of the day, the labels are going to do what's best for them, right? Next part. Now, this is really interesting. He says, while you've been working with Pusha, have you had challenges with that department before? It says in the beginning, no, but starting in 2018, yeah, that's the year Pusha released the story Out of Now. He put that on SoundCloud. It's never been officially released on streaming. Y'all remember I told y'all that before, right? They asked, was that a way of getting around any internal objections? They said part of the reason, to avoid that. Also, we never actually properly cleared it with Hove or whoever owns that sample and things like that. That's very interesting because remember, Story Out and Down, I believe, was done over the story of OJ, which was on Jay-Z's 444 album. Okay, these guys are being very candid here, and I do want to just kind of ask something here. If you guys are still here with me, do you think this is kind of taking away from the pure marketing of the upcoming project, the focus of the project with the clips and Pusha and No Malice, or do you think it's all getting you more excited? I'm still thinking on that. Let's move on to the next topic here. Now, this one, I might need some help, right? Because, they asked Stephen Victor, Pusha T mentioned 2 songs in his interview with GQ, Rick Ross, Maybach Music 6, and Pop Smoke's Paranoia, where his verses weren't ultimately cut. Was that because of the same department scrutiny, right? I got to take Stephen Victor's word here, but I'm gonna point something else out to you guys. It says, yes, what happened on the Pop Smoke song is that UMG thought he was dissing Drake on that song. He wasn't, but they thought he was. Now, what I really kind of want to point out here is, if UMG thought he was dissing Drake on that song, is this with Drake accent or without Drake accent? Do they just think they just want to protect their money? Is that how they do that? And would that have probably put a battery in Drake's back to think that, anybody that he goes up against, the label will just protect him automatically without accent? I find that very interesting. And I also find that when we talk about Kendrick again, is like, yeah, you will protect the number 1 guy versus the number 25th guy. But would you protect the number 1 guy against the number 2 guy who can take this and make you the money that the number 1 guy is making you, even if it's short term, right? Okay, he says he wasn't, but they thought he was. Pop Smoke was released on my label, Victor Victor, and obviously I managed Push. So they came out and said, we're not going to put this out now unless you get Push to change the lyrics. Even though it has nothing to do with Pop Smoke, they're like, either he changes the lyrics or we're not putting that album. Steven says, what happened to freedom of speech? First of all, he's not dissing Drake. How do you tell him change the lyrics or not? For me personally, I'm of the belief that if Drake can take subs on people all over places, Kendrick can take subs, Jay-Z can take subs, people should be able to take subs back. So, as usual, HQ is not with the label here. And I would like to grill Drake on that too. Do you approve of the label doing that for you? Because I don't. And you shouldn't either. And then one more thing I do want to add on the Pop Smoke Paranoia joint. Y'all remember Young Thug was involved in that? So I'm trying to get the story right, because Young Thug is saying that he didn't know that Pusha was dissing on that record. And even Thug himself, I believe, was like, he doesn't want to be on the record if Pusha's going to be on there dissing, right? He didn't know that. But the record had got leaked. You remember the Mississauga line and things like that? So, but Pusha, I remember, clarified and said, I asked for Young Thug to be on the project. No one knew what the song was about. No one knew what my lyrics were. So what I don't appreciate, though, is they're saying that those weren't shots at Drake on that record. I can hear it. I heard the leak. They were subs. You were referring to the running up on stage stuff. Those were subs. And Pusha, I'm not against what you did, because it's hip hop and niggas play chess all the time. But I wouldn't be shocked you going to ask Young Thug to get on a record and you thought you could sneak, disses with, people that Drake is cool with. I don't put that past you. And Drake's done the same thing. I just want us to all just kind of let's just tell the truth around here. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I mean, again, with this one. From what Push told me, this Kendrick record they're concerned about is not dissing Drake either. He says, I don't know they're concerned, but they're like, there's a line here we think it's controversial. Controversial is different from dissing, but okay. Kendrick needs to change it. We're not putting it out. See, I don't like that either, but I will say that if the line we're talking about is therapy taught me how to open up, it also taught me I don't give a F. I don't think that's that crazy. UMG, Def Jam, you're insane for going. That's. I think it was more about the optics of these two guys. There's no way it had to be that line. But we'll wait. I believe July 11th we'll hear the song. Now this is why I'm with Steven here. It gets to the point where the conversation became, you can't keep stopping this guy from being able to put out hard. That's facts. He's a rapper. Every time he puts out an album or song, you can't listen to it and make sure he's not dissing nobody. That's facts. Somebody. Before he puts it out, he has to think about what he's saying before saying it. Now I see why they paid that $1 million. Nothing is worth your freedom. You know what I'm saying? No dollar amount is worth your freedom. Now, I'm kind of going to rush through this part right here, but it's really important. I wish I had more time. Where they talk about how much they paid, right? So they said, listen, down here says, this is when Pusha and his brother decided to leave. They said, let's find another deal. Let's figure out a business. They didn't drop us. They were like, pay us this money, which was an exorbitant amount of money, a shit ton of money. And we'll let you out the deal. That's what happened. We paid them the money. It was an insane amount of money. It wasn't like 200,000 or nothing like that, right? And Billboard with the follow-up question, I love that. So you have to pay 7 figures to get out the deal? They said, yeah. So he said, once I knew I had the deal in principle with Def Jam to leave, I got on the phone with Jay-Z. I was like, this is what happening. We've been talking XYZ. He hit me back right away. You just made my day. Let's figure out. We need to get it done. I went back to Pusha, said, listen, Jay's going to give us a very artist-friendly deal. We get to own the masters and put the marketing power behind Rock Nation. And that's the part that's important, right? Def Jam under UMG, Rock Nation partnership. Pusha has his freedom.